it's just Trey here, and I'm just popping in to give a disclaimer. The audio kind of, I wasn't monitoring it super well, so my mic actually bleeds into Jared's mic, and it creates this echo. But anyways, thought I'd preface that. It'll be going back to sounding good next episode. So, anyways, enjoy. All right, welcome back to the In Our Headspace podcast. This is episode 14, I think. Yes, 14. And I was just checking our stats, and I decided I'd get Jared's reaction on as part of the episode. So that's how we're going to open this up. So, Jared.
I'm not going to be excited.
I know, but it's a lot more than I think you're expecting. So, what were we at last time I told you?
171? Really?
Last time.
Are you sure? Or was it 161?
We weren't even. Yeah, it was 160.
160. Okay, 161.
We had just barely hit 160. So between that, which was about a little over a week ago.
Okay.
Since the last episode,
we
got 190. Almost 200.
All right. I still don't believe this.
And we have
witchcraft you're telling me.
We have almost 15 views per episode.
So yeah.
Or downloads
per episode. I don't use Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I don't know how they work.
That's most people's preferred method of listening to podcasts.
I'll just say this. I don't know how the fuck they're finding it. I doubt.
So here's
They're not even real people, Trey. They're not even real people.
Hey, real people listen to us, Jared. Here's the thing. Our podcast is long form, meaning you can't just sit down and watch it on YouTube really easily. Most of the time, and I've heard this from literally everybody that I know personally that listens to our podcast, they prefer to listen to it in the background of them doing something else.
That's because they don't have YouTube Advanced.
Yeah, because they don't want to have to pay money when they can just get it for free. YouTube
Advanced is free. You know why they call it YouTube Advanced?
Because it's hacker mode.
Not entirely.
You think
Listen.
Anybody listening to us and be like, man, I wish I could listen to the In Our Headspace podcast while locking my phone screen. I'm going to get YouTube Advanced instead of just going on Apple Podcasts.
Well, see, that's the first issue. You need Android, I think. I don't think it's for iOS.
Right. But if you have Android, just use your Spotify account. More people have a Spotify account than they do whatever the hell that is.
A YouTube account.
No, downloading this external app.
Yeah.
That they will unlikely to remember the name of unless you tell them one more time.
YouTube Advanced.
Or you could be like, oh, there's a direct link in the description of this YouTube video that takes me right to Spotify or iTunes.
Listen,
I wonder what option they're going to choose.
Anything that came easy is not worth building towards to. And
you mean to say that we're going to get more out of YouTube than we will?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But
it's beneficial for us to be getting downloads on the other platforms because once we hit a certain number of downloads...
I am not familiar with these other sites, so that's why I am...
Spotify. You
skeptical.
Know what Spotify is.
I couldn't even find Joe Rogan stuff. I'd Google Joe Rogan Spotify and just give me articles.
Go on Spotify, search Joe Rogan Experience. He pops up.
I'm not going to do that. Maybe I will.
You'll probably get Spotify Advanced and do it that way.
Well, maybe. You know why they call it Advanced?
Because you can lock your phone?
No, because they took out the ad.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been there in the first place if they didn't say Advanced.
Do you not get it?
No, I get it.
Okay.
But I'm saying they wouldn't have to take the ad out.
If these base platforms didn't have a shit ton of ads.
How else are they going to make money?
I don't know. Figure that out. I don't want ads.
Okay, imagine you have a company, right?
Yeah, then I want ads to play.
Yes.
But I'm not the producer. I am a consumer. I want what's best for me.
Yeah. A free 5-second ad.
A 5-second my ass. There's 6 seconds and there's 2 of them.
Okay. 10 seconds out of your life.
12 seconds.
12 seconds out of your life. So you'd rather not support the creators you watch? Because they get a portion of that revenue.
The people that I watch, first of all, are demonetized. Let's get that straight. And if any of them are monetized, you should know the whole situation. They're like, I got 1 million views and I got paid 60 cents. Whippy.
Well, I
Well,
think that's a bit of an exaggeration. And also,
okay, sorry, $1.63
per view.
No,
They get more than $1.63 per million views.
I'll find. There was one.
That is because people
Here,
with hundreds of thousands of subscribers are able to do YouTube full time.
I think that's misleading. I think that was when YouTube was in the golden ages, like when Sam the Dude could do shit like that.
There's people that I'm watching currently that are like, I'm finally able to do YouTube full time because I hit this milestone.
All right.
He's got under 200,000 subs and he does YouTube full time.
And I know people with millions of subscribers that are like, yeah, I don't make that much.
The biggest key on YouTube is having consistent views and also uploading consistently so that you get placed in the algorithm to then achieve more views.
I think you missed a big portion is the type of content they produce.
Okay, but that's not on the ads.
That is on the ads because those already get demonetized.
They get demonetized by YouTube, which then they do sponsorships because of their following.
Which has nothing to do...
Which is an ad.
Which has nothing to do with like built-in ads.
Okay, but if they do a sponsorship, is that an ad?
Yes.
Do you skip them? I'm not saying you shouldn't, because I skip them too. What I'm saying is it takes about, if they do a 1 or 2 minute
you are
ad,
completely misrepresenting a whole concept here, and it is baffling me.
What concept?
You're taking the concept of actually YouTube calculating the ad or whatever the ads are playing on their video, and then you're comparing it to the creator having their own personal relationship with a company. That's like completely separate stuff.
No, that's not what I was saying.
That's what you just described, though.
No, I was saying,
because you said, oh, would you skipping an actual YouTube ad or having ad block and then skipping the in YouTube video? Well, it doesn't matter if I skip the in YouTube video because I already made money.
Right.
Yeah. So what's your point?
But the thing is, people can do sponsorships and ads on a video.
Yes.
And if you watch the ad, they get paid for you watching the ad.
I never said you wouldn't.
So what I'm saying is, if you're watching somebody,
all right,
who relies on that income from the ads,
which ad?
The ads that YouTube puts on videos.
I already told you the people I watch don't have that.
Every single person you watch doesn't have ads, or is it because you use methods to not see the ads?
A lot of the YouTube content I watch, I'm not going to say who because I don't want to get lit the fuck up, is political things.
Well, and that stuff doesn't have ads on it.
Well, and then not safe for work or whatever don't do very well. I'm just talking about the whole algorithm, like, when you like leave in cursing, you get like penalized or whatever, right?
Yeah,
that's why everyone's censoring themselves
within the first minute. Yeah,
stuff like that.
Right. So you're only using YouTube Advanced because,
well, then sometimes maybe I'll listen to a really big like pop song. Right. But if you're going to argue they need more money, it's like,
I'm not talking about though, obviously, because they're not a content creator. They're either an artist that is already getting money, or they're just posting on YouTube to get exposure. Kind of like how we do it. What I'm getting at is, the whole point of this is essentially lost. But what I'm saying is, if you're going out of your way to download this app for Android, to then avoid ads that aren't playing on the videos anyways, what's the point? Other than the fact that you can play it when the app is closed.
Well, there's also times where, for example, I'll watch a clip of something. Okay, maybe it's a South Park clip, maybe it's whatever clip. And you're like, why should I need to watch an ad for that clip? But, for example.
Yes, I can understand thinking, oh, why am I getting this ad? But at the same time, to go through
you better not call it strenuous because it's not.
I'm not saying strenuous.
Then to go through what?
To go through the effort to find this app, to then download it, and then continually use it all the time.
Yeah.
For the one video, however the distance between the videos that have ads on them. Like what difference does it really make?
It's convenient for me. I love listening to music, and I don't want, because I have my own playlists.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't want an ad after, because they have ads before and they have ads after.
I have a suggestion for you then. If you're into listening to music, I know this really cool app.
Yeah.
That its entire existence is music streaming.
Yeah.
Do you know what it's called?
I know what it's called.
You ever considered it?
Why would I need to create a whole nother app when the app I currently have already does that for me?
Because it's YouTube, and you can actually download Spotify playlists or explore other people's playlists and open like your, I guess, perception.
I don't want to download videos. 2,
no, I know, but I'm saying, like, okay, if say you're going on a road trip,
right,
and you want to listen to music,
yeah,
but then you can't because you don't have service.
Okay.
If you then, before you go on the road trip, just
which I've done this. A famous website. You could quick Google YouTube to MP3. I know, shocker.
No, but going through each individual link and downloading the MP3 file and then putting that on your phone, or clicking one button on Spotify and then it doesn't show up anywhere except the Spotify app, and then you just click shuffle or play or whatever on your trip, and then when you get back, you can just get rid of that, and then you can still listen to the music. For me, it's never been a big deal because at the same time, like, cool, it's on my computer, and I could just transfer that wherever because I have the files. Okay. And I've done that before. It's very convenient just to have the files. But I'd argue it's more convenient to just press the button on your phone. Well, then we got to look at, what would you say, frequency. How often am I going to places out of service to justify? How often are you watching videos with ads on them? I don't know. All I'm saying is, I feel like what you're saying is inherently flawed and is not making fully. Like, what are you saying? Let me ask you that. What are you saying, Trey? I'm essentially arguing the point that you don't know who would listen to our podcast on iTunes or Spotify when they could just get, for example, YouTube Vanced. But I'm saying, what advantage does YouTube Vanced have over Spotify and iTunes? To me, it seems, specifically in your use case, not like a huge difference. I already told you, and I'll say it again. You're able to lock your phone. You could hit your home button. It plays in the background. So does Spotify. So does YouTube Vanced. No, I know, but with Spotify being the bigger platform and the more widely used, and it comes with this other selection. Okay. Right? All I have merely done is made a recommendation, and you have gone out of your way to be like, why would you do that, Jared? You're the one who said, why would you do that? Why would I do what? Not why would I do that, I guess, but you're saying who would use those other apps other than YouTube? That was the initial question. Yes. Which is essentially what you're saying I did, which maybe I did, but I was doing it in response to your initial question. And then I stated, you said people, they will like to play it in the background. Yes. And then I said, YouTube Vanced can do that. Simple as that. And then you made the argument, well, why would you go out of your way? Why would you go and download YouTube Vanced on only a specific demographic of people when they likely already have Spotify? It's not a specific... Say that again? A specific demographic, which would be Android users. Okay. That's what the point of me saying specific demographic. Okay. And also, since Spotify has a much larger user base, there's a higher probability that they have a Spotify account / downloaded Spotify. And if they aren't in either of those two camps, they likely have an iPhone, which has this app pre-installed that you have to do nothing but search our name on. Okay, so your question is, why would I ask the Android? What's the point of YouTube Vanced if Spotify is bigger, a better platform, and also comes with every other benefit? Because there's no ads on it either. I feel like that's a silly question, but I'll say it. You can watch whatever YouTube videos you want. No, I'm saying specific use case for our podcast, because that's what this was initially about. You could use it to play in the background. But I feel like when you word it that way, Trey, that's very disingenuous saying for this use case only. Because when I then say... That's the root of this whole conversation, though.
Yes, and I said, "Oh, you could play it in the background," but then when you say you could also do it on Spotify, I don't think that should
Yes.
downplay the whole YouTube thing, because either way, you have to go out of your way to download either or.
Okay.
So I don't see the argument
But
when you
Spotify
say
is available to everybody.
yes, and that's why I said Android users. So I don't get your argument. Because you're saying when I say you could play it in the background, you say so can Spotify. It's like, okay, that's great.
You can listen without ads. So can
That's great.
Spotify.
So can YouTube Advanced. So what are
Yeah,
we
but
where are we getting at?
what I'm getting at is
Yes, what are you getting at?
if
Well, because I'm just going to repeat what you say because that's what you've been doing
you're
to
getting
me.
you're getting
Trey,
more into
you
this.
love to argue, and it triggers me sometimes.
I love to argue what? I was responding to you saying, who would use Spotify? And I was like, well, most people use Spotify for this reason. You're like, well, why not YouTube Advanced? And then I said,
Okay,
because
yes,
of
when I
these reasons.
yes, when I say something extreme like that, I'm playing, but also yes,
I'm not taking this super seriously.
I'm not taking it super serious. I'm just answering your questions because we're going in a loop.
That's what I'm trying to do too.
Well, all you've just been repeating stuff, so that's why
I've been responding to the things you're saying.
Okay, I told you could play it in the background. You could do this. That's what I said, and then you
there's no ads.
yes, and then you repeated the same thing on Spotify. I was like, what does that accomplish?
I also, you're leaving out the fact that I said Spotify has the wider user base, more likelihood of people having an account already / owning the app.
Yes, and that's when I just said, for people that have YouTube, I simply made a recommendation. That's all I simply did, and then you retorted with, well,
You
why?
should use Spotify.
Yes.
That's essentially what I said.
And I feel like that's
Instead,
a silly
just use
argument
Spotify.
because it's like, why drink orange juice when you could drink apple juice?
I disagree with that because the reason I'm saying you should use Spotify
Okay.
is because A, it benefits us more. B,
Okay.
it gives them more options. Clearly, they're wanting to listen to podcasts, and you're going to have a better opportunity to do that on Spotify than you are on YouTube.
Okay.
And like I said before, my personal opinion on YouTube ads is if it's 12 seconds, but what you're watching, it then contributes to whoever,
Okay.
I'd say that's a net positive.
Okay.
But that's my view on the ad thing, which at this point is irrelevant. But if it's easier to search up and download Spotify and it's a bigger demographic of people, I may as well be promoting Spotify as opposed to YouTube Advanced, which is like, I'm not saying don't get YouTube Advanced. I'm just saying you made the argument that, well, I just use YouTube Advanced instead of Spotify. And I was like, well, you could just use Spotify instead. That's essentially what this was about. I was attempting to discuss both sides.
No, you're discussing your side.
No, because we were talking about YouTube Advanced to begin with.
You weren't you don't even know all about YouTube Advanced, so you can't really say you're discussing both sides.
But I was asking you questions.
Yes, I was speaking from YouTube Advanced side and you're speaking from Spotify's side.
Yes, and we were discussing, okay, YouTube Advanced does this, Spotify does this. Why would you get this? And you tell me why you would watch YouTube Advanced. I'm like, well, if that's your thought, why not do this? I wouldn't say I was saying don't use YouTube Advanced.
Well, you kind of prelude to that when you say, well, it does this too. Like, come on. When you say, oh, it has no ads too and has a bigger demographic, does that not lean towards you should get Spotify instead?
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be a discussion. I was like, yeah. If I had nothing to say in response to it, to then say whatever side I was talking about.
Okay, the reason why it's annoying is because it's turned into this one-up game, and that is what I find annoying about it.
I don't perceive it that way, but I guess that's my side. Well, see,
and this is why I've talked to Cameron about this, and I just find it annoying. Like, for example, when we talk about Smite builds, that's why I don't like to talk to you guys about it, because conversations like this happen, and I just have to wait for you guys to be like, oh, I'll change it, for example, because it just goes in circles where we each try to explain our viewpoint and how it went.
And using the information we know, but when it boils down to my opinion versus your opinion, of course it's going to go there.
Yes. What I find silly about this whole situation was simply how this turned into a debate over using Spotify or YouTube Advanced, and how the arguments were simply brought up. I would bring up something and then you would say Spotify does the same thing. And so I just find it silly, inherent, like that whole interaction right there.
Okay. I
Because I just like that's
can
why I started
understand that.
repeating
Yeah.
what you started to say, because that's what was happening.
Right.
Because I would say you could play in the background. You can play it in the
All right.
background too.
I will take responsibility.
Well, it's
that
just
I tend to, I guess, argue. I don't. I will say, okay, I argue. I don't see it as arguing when I'm doing it.
we could
but
change it. Okay,
can
arguing
understand
seems
that.
aggressive. We could just say debate. I think debate's
Yes.
more appropriate than arguing because we're not angry at each other.
Correct.
We're just stating things, but not out
Yes.
of anger.
Yes.
So I'd say debating's more appropriate for it. And I just find it annoying
All right.
that we debate so much over
Yes.
things that I would say are
Trivial.
very trivial.
Yes.
Like like fucking Loki, Ares rework, which one should come first? I get shit like that, where we're always like debating trivial shit.
Right. But when you care about a topic and you want to share your opinion on it, I don't think it's extremely inappropriate. At least that's my opinion on it. Is if we're
think of it like
in a conversation,
this. Think of it like this. You use a platform for whatever it is, and then I just come in and say, well, why do you use it when you could just use this? So, well,
and then I'd respond with, well, I use it because of this.
And then I say, well, that does that too. Does it not?
And then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I see your point.
Yeah, but do you not see how that would be annoying? Or is that just me?
No, I can understand how that would be annoying.
Okay.
I get that it feels almost like I'm trying to invalidate your decision.
Well, because I kind of feel like that's what it is.
Well, that is not my intention.
Okay.
My intention is merely to be like, oh, well, this is my thoughts and opinions on this thing that I know about. And then I hear your thoughts and opinions. And I realize I do that to Mia too. So you're not alone there. So clearly I do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to draw a line in the sand here because I'm sometimes sick of this whole boiling down to what would you call it? It's a bad example for this, so it doesn't really work, but continue.
I'd say I either overanalyze or I enjoy that type of discussion. And I think if you don't enjoy that, that's fair.
I enjoy it for when it's quote unquote important, which is completely subjective.
Exactly. And I think if it's a topic, and I think that's probably why we do this podcast well, is because a lot of the time it's a topic we both care about. So we go back and forth.
Yeah.
But when it's not, then it can be annoying to the other party. And I understand that because I know Cameron and I do that.
That's why I like to sit out of it because I'm just like,
just stuff we like to do.
Well, I like to view you guys
go back and forth.
I just view you guys as fucking stubborn bulls is how I view both of you. I was like, I gotta grab you guys by the fucking horns.
I think at the end of the day, it's at least when it's between him and I, it's mostly harmless. There are times where it's like we just argue and then don't come to a conclusion, which is fine. But I am finding that, for example, with Mia, she'll say something and then I'll just say, well, this other thing. And then it's like, then she feels the need to defend her position, which then I'm like, oh, okay, now we're engaging in this conversation. And then I go again. And then it's like, it gets to the point where she's annoyed by it because I guess I just don't recognize when it's being annoying. So
here, and to make it simple with the whole YouTube Advanced and Spotify thing, simply put it, I think having options are good.
Yeah.
Having more than one option to pick from. That's why monopolies are not a great thing for consumers.
Correct.
And so that's why having multiple different platforms to do multiple different things is why I like it.
Yeah.
But for me, when you're talking about the whole debating thing, like there's times for when I'm debating someone, when it's quote unquote intellectual, I don't have that many intellectual debates. The most I could have is like in college.
Right.
But even so, there's someone better than us in the subject field, at least for now. But for me, whenever it's like with friends or whatever, whenever I feel like I could feel any aggression. Whenever I feel like it's aggression from either party or distaste from any party, then for me, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And then that
Yes.
bothers me for a little bit. Like I'll get off the call
Yes.
and be like, man, that
It
really
becomes
bothered
more.
me.
It becomes more.
Well,
I
because
I don't like it when it becomes aggressive. I don't think
it's a
anybody does,
personal
but
relationship.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, that conversation with someone I'm personal with didn't go very well.
Right.
And so then it will bother me for, maybe for the rest of the day. And then I wake up, it's
Right.
like, oh, it's fine.
Right.
That's how I usually
I
go about those things.
I think
There's few debates where I feel like it went without a hitch,
right.
because for me or from the other person, we don't like to be wrong.
Right. And you truly think what you're saying, like you're basing it off of all the knowledge that you know, and when someone's like, well, that's wrong, it's like, but I know about this thing. Like I know the things I know about it, and that's where I'm coming from, but still that's not enough. And I think from my point of view, in those situations, it can result in this thing where it's like, I'm talking about something and I'm interested in it. And then all of a sudden, by the end of it, the other person's annoyed. And then I'm like, what did I do wrong?
I got a little annoyed, I won't lie.
Yes, I know. I
got annoyed
because
because
why
then
I was like, I totally backed off because I was like, that's not my intention.
I think it triggers something where it was like some Smite PTSD, because then you made the comment like, why are you getting so emotional about it?
Right.
And I was like,
that's probably not the best response.
and I was like,
yeah.
I was going to then go off the tangent like, why does it matter? I was like, whatever, I'll just stick to the subject matter.
Yes. I think that's an important that can relate back to our communication topic of, I think it's important, like it's easier to go off on those like tangents when you're in a Skype call, because you can't, all you can hear is the person's voice. You can't read their facial expression or body language or anything.
I make a face in my head. That's what I do.
I could tell just the way you were moving around. I was like, shit.
Well, see, and again, this is how I feel like whenever I'm in like if it's like a joust thing, and I do try to make around, like it feels like I'm always wrestling with the bulls.
I feel
so that's why a lot of the times I just tap out. I'm just like, whatever. I'm just gonna let it go.
Typically my response as well, is when I feel like there are times where I want so badly to say something in defense of myself, but then I'm like, it's pointless. I just stay quiet. But that's almost worse, because then I like stew in it, and then I'm like,
brooding.
I want to say this thing, but I'm just not going to say it because it's going to stir it up more. But I think, I don't know. It's interesting because I think that's a prime example of just mismatching perception. My perception of it is completely different from your perception of it. Not to say one's right or wrong. Obviously, I feel like considering the fact that this is essentially a pattern, I think it's just part of my personality where I try to stay calm / stay on one level the whole time. But then if the other person's like not on the same level and I just keep steamrolling ahead, that makes it worse, and it almost invalidates the other person's feelings and emotions, because now they feel like they're either being ignored or they're feeling something incorrectly, which isn't effective in any way.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
For me, it was, I didn't articulate as well as I could have for what I wanted to say. And so when I was trying to communicate to you, it felt as if whatever I was saying wasn't reaching what I was meant to say.
What you were intending to say wasn't necessarily getting across to me.
Yes. And so, when I tried to make a point and then it seemed like you didn't quite get it, I'm now like, okay.
Right.
Now I'm kind of frustrated.
Right.
And then, but like, it's not like I'm just going to pause and be like, okay, let me redo that whole thing. Right. Because then the conversation continues.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, I failed on that one. And I try to do it again for something else. Like, okay, now I failed on that one.
Yeah.
And so then what I'm trying to articulate, that's why it's nice to know the English language. You just say concepts for word. Anyways, that's a whole
Yeah.
different thing.
Get very metaphorical.
But that's the reason why I started amping up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like the words that I was trying to say weren't quite reaching to you. And so,
Right.
because the concepts I was trying to say is like, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense when I just say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the conversation continues. And so, okay, you got to move on from that one.
Right.
And then I'm thinking about that in the back of my head. I was like, oh, I wasn't able to say that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
And now I'm going to have that in my head later, which then causes more. I've also learned that when I'm in those situations, I tend to get in this spot where I'm like, think about it like a game of mental chess.
Yeah.
When you really don't need to. Like, it's not big enough deal, but like my mind almost defaults to that position where it's like, well, you say something and I'm like, no, wrong. And you say something, I'm like, no, wrong. Oh, no, but what about this and this? And then it's like constantly like, I'm trying to get in this spot where it's like almost like, oh, I mean this, or I said this and this is the information to back it up. But it comes off as like, no, you can't say that. That doesn't work. No, that's not valid. Don't even try to say that because I already thought about that. Like it comes off in that way where like, then it corners the other half of the conversation to the point where it's like, what are we even talking about? Why are we even like discussing this if I can't even get a word in, essentially? And I'm saying I do that to other people unintentionally. And it's like, I think for me, that comes from a place of like, I'm going to use my family as an example.
All right.
Growing up, I was a middle child, and I felt like during conflict with my siblings, it would be like, it was a constant game of that, of like, I'm right and this is why. Well, no, I'm right and this is why you're wrong. And I try my hardest not to tell people they're wrong, but whether or not I say it in words, it can still be implied or come off as like invalidating somebody, which then in turn just destroys communication. And you just can't, like, you have to validate the other person's what they're saying, or the other person's going to like disconnect from the conversation. And I think that's something I'm like, I still got to like recognize when it's happening, because this time I recognized it. It wasn't quite too late, but I recognized it after you had changed your state of mind on it. And then that's when I was like, oh crap, let's pull it back a little bit. And now we're having this discussion. But I think it's just fascinating because it's so easy to get in that, like you were saying, the one up. Even if I'm not trying to one up, the conversation can steer that way. And all of a sudden it's like a contest, who wins, who loses, when no one should win or lose. It's just when you're having a neutral, mutual discussion, it's like the goal is to understand, not to be victorious. And I feel like that can happen a lot if one or both people can't like either come to an understanding or reach that like level ground again, because it can easily, like, power dynamic essentially is what it is. And like as soon as one person, like you were saying, it could be a snowball effect where like I'm getting on, like constantly like saying no, 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 and then you're getting frustrated by that and you're like, fine, I'm just going to stop bringing it up.
Well, it's not even that. Well, that could be part of it,
right?
But it turns into more of like, when, for example, if you do say no, 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 no,
Yeah.
I view it as like, well, why is it no, no, no? Are you sure it's valid? Why are you saying no, no, no?
Right.
And then also because I knew I was fucking getting ramped up too.
Mhm.
And so that's when I was just trying to fucking be like, all right, I don't even know what I said towards the end, trying to think about it, what I said towards the end.
Though we have this all recorded.
Yeah.
This is a very unique episode, but I like it.
It's very unique. But that's why I don't know if you've noticed.
Mhm.
Cameron calls me out, and I think it's funny. Cameron will ask me to explain something, and I just don't.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because of reasons that we just had before.
Yeah.
So I've taken an extremist the opposite of basically
Yes.
what you have. And I'm not saying, because there are times where if I probably properly explained myself or something, it would have been easier. Because I know Cameron will ask me why this, why that. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll just brush it off or won't say anything, or we'll say just cuz. And Cameron will be like, thanks for the fucking knowledge, like Mr. Wise guy.
And then all of a sudden that's ammo against you.
Well, and I know, like, I've just kind of accepted. I'm just like, whatever.
Right.
Because we've talked about this before, and it's kind of like, I view it as what's the whole thing, like, you shouldn't be your friend's boss.
Yes.
And so, for example, whenever it's friends, and it's like, when it gets to critiquing.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, fuck that, dude. In my opinion, that's like, and I don't think it's right for me to take the extremist position to not explain, just be quiet and just let whatever happens.
It's kind of what I do.
Because that's just what I'm doing, where it's just like, whatever you guys are doing, whatever you guys are getting mad at, frustrated at, I'm not going to give my 2 cents. I'm just going to stay quiet.
Right.
I even do that with my parents whenever they're talking. My dad notices it and be like, "Do you really explain yourself?" And I'll just sigh because I'm like, it's going to turn into this long ass conversation. I'm like,
I'd rather much effort. Yeah.
I'd rather I'll just rather be quiet.
Seriously,
making me like, I'll seem like a fucking crazy person. I'll take it, whatever.
It's
I'll move on.
almost like this position of, no matter what I say, it likely won't even get across, which could be true in some cases, but also, like you're saying, it could also be the thing that resolves it the fastest.
Yes.
But I'd say it's hard to tell. I think it depends on who you're talking to.
It's very wishy-washy.
Yeah.
To say or to predict something like that.
Yeah.
But that's just how but with strangers, for some reason I'll say stuff to them because it's very simple, like almost little to no bias. I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
But again, when it's a personal things,
and people, here's the thing: when you're in a personal one-on-one relationship, people take things more personally. Big surprise. So if you say something that, say I had reacted the opposite, and you had said something about, well, this discussion turns into it was this one-up thing, and then I'm like, well, no, it wasn't, and I'm right because of this, and blah blah blah, and I don't do that, and like, it can easily, because then I could perceive what you're saying as like an attack, and all of a sudden now I have to get defensive about it, which I used to do that a lot when I was younger, and that's one of the things I've learned, specifically relating to like what we're saying about the communication, is like, if you just like pull yourself away from your emotions for like 30 seconds and you just like, okay, I'm not helping the situation here. It'd be best if we like equalize back out instead of like keep trying to be right all the time. And it's hard because there's this thing called ego that gets in the way. And especially when you're in an interpersonal relationship, it's like you've got established whatever context to like your relationship, and say one person is the one that always wins the arguments. All of a sudden that person starts losing the argument, and it's like they take it personally and they get defensive, and it's like it can create long-term issues with communication. So it's like, it's this weird fine line, but I think it mostly takes like a self-awareness to where like I am doing that. I don't know.
Well, I also have a person like for example, to quickly like relate like the whole Crusher thing, starting with that.
Oh yeah.
Where like you and Cameron were both on the side.
The game we play all the time.
Yeah, like I'll relate it to what just happened earlier.
Yeah.
But when you guys came down with the authority of Pringles does it. Right. And then I check and I'm like, this dude's building whatever the fuck he's building.
Right.
I'm like, this dude went Jotun's first, for fuck's sakes. Like,
yeah.
And I just see all this crazy shit. I was
that example, I get your viewpoint on it. And that's why I was like, I mean, it's not any better me doing it after the fact, but just so you know, it's like,
yeah,
we were in that discussion and I was like, what are you talking about, Jared? We already figured this out.
Yeah.
This guy that we've mutually all agreed, like, we'll just follow what he does. Duh, essentially was my mindset on it. And then it was like, then I did the thing you said just because I was like, okay, I keep not doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just going to try what Jared was saying. And then it works. And it's like, okay, from now forward.
Well, I've actually edited the build a lot.
Okay.
I don't
But
know if
essentially what I'm saying is it sucks to like, it makes me feel like, I know it's not a big deal by any stretch of the imagination, but like there is like a small amount of guilt that's like, you should give people a base amount of trust / respect.
Yeah, it's like the fucking Thanos things, like, oh, what cost did I do to earn this fucking victory?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was like,
it doesn't make you feel good when I'm like, oh well, now I listen to you now that I've proved it to myself instead of just believing you.
Yeah, so it's just like,
and it's I think
that's why we have mediators in real life.
Yeah,
third parties
that's
coming
literally
in.
The point of a therapist and like a family therapy or relationship therapy is everybody. The way that makes it work is the therapist validates. Knowing from experience, the therapist will validate and make the other person feel comfortable speaking their mind.
Well, they also don't have any judgment because they don't even know you.
It's unbiased.
There's no bias there.
But when you have two people who've known each other for so long, there's extreme biases just innately. And anyways, whenever you end up being in like a relationship with a girl, you will run into these, but
I'll figure that road when the time comes.
I will tell you now though, it's like it's almost eye-opening the amount of times you kind of just ignore your habits until all of a sudden that habit, like just now, that habit that I have all of a sudden had an effect on what we were doing. And then it's like, oh, like, whoops, almost, but you've already done it.
Yeah.
So then now what?
See, like,
just like the build thing, I was just saying, like, my habit is like, well, this is the role I play on our team, Jared. So I know what I'm doing. We already agreed. And then it doesn't help that Karen was also taking my side on it. So then in my head, I was like, see, I am right. Whether or not I actually was, we were basing it on something we thought was true. But your point of, well, that was months ago, should have played more weight,
like,
I think.
And it's just inconvenient to be like, oh, don't come from authority. Majority doesn't mean the minorities. And like, like there's all these concepts that we could say, but again, it's in the moment.
Yeah.
You're not going to splurt this shit out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Because again, as we just talked about, it's whatever the fuck you grab your hands on for the one-up situation.
Yeah.
Whatever's nearest to you.
That dynamic, it's like so hard to get out of it, like at will, until one of two things happens. Either one person gets annoyed and they just stop talking about it, or like the whole thing just like goes into something completely irrelevant. And then it's like, then you're forced to essentially come out of that conversation. It's like a ship is just spiraling down, and can you like pull the lever before it actually hits the ground, essentially?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think let this be an example of like, you don't always have to like, not every quote unquote argument or debate has to have a winner. I don't think.
I'm just thinking how retarded I'm going to sound when we play back to it.
Oh, me too.
And then I'm like, what the fuck's coming out? Like, that's what I'm thinking about. I was like, what stupid shit did I say during that whole thing? That's all I'm thinking about.
I got this feeling of when it initially started and you had like called out something I said. I was like, oh shit, this is on recording. What if I did say something? Like, what if I am an idiot kind of thing?
But I already know I said some stupid shit.
Honestly, it's irrelevant. Like, if anything, this is an example of like a specific communication.
It's going to be an interesting form of humility.
Yes.
Which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
For people who are here out there, because
they get a little insight.
They get a little insight
more
that
than past the podcast.
Yeah, I too am not that smart from time to time.
Right. We're both young. We're both.
I don't even like that excuse.
No, I know.
I just like I just say stupid. It's an easy label.
Yeah. We're stupid.
That's just what I like to say. simple, easy.
Yeah. I
But I did have something to talk about if you have nothing else to talk about.
I was gonna say one more thing, but I'm trying to remember
Okay.
what it was. It was like, I don't know. What were you gonna talk about? I forgot.
So going back to what you said earlier about the relationship and when I come across that journey for a committed one.
Yes.
In my sociology class, it was a very interesting topic. The topic was just talking about the ideal family.
Yeah.
And the teacher was just basically saying how, like, for example, the nuclear family, it's what it's like son, daughter, dog, a baby or something, and then like the boat, the cabin, shit like that. Having picnics or whatever, hot dogs, blah, blah, burgers, American stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it used to be. And he was basically describing how it seems that each generation, whatever the ideal family is, like, it's never truly that. It's just the families still have their fucking problems.
Yeah.
And it seems like when we just look back on it, it's like, oh, things seem to be so much nicer. Because I heard stories of when my grandparents just got together and started raising their kids. They sure as hell were not on the outside, they did seem like the nuclear, because they had a cabin, they had a boat, they have their house, they have their cars.
Right.
They have fucking 5 kids. They have a dog. Like, they had the whole package. But I wouldn't say it was necessarily paradise.
No.
By any means.
I think to that point. Why does my mic seem so loud? I don't know why. Anyways.
For me, whenever you edit, like, I thought I sounded loud.
So you were louder than me.
Okay,
so then
that's what it was.
I turned up my gain, and then all of a sudden I was way louder. So I'm just going to not touch it.
Okay.
I think I'm at a decent spot looking at the waveforms. But to your point, and I'm speaking from the 2 living experiences I've had getting out of high school, it's really not easy to coexist with another human. No matter who it is, no matter how good a relationship you had, I'm saying Shane and I lived together for 2 years.
Yeah.
Super close friends. We've known each other for a super long time. Going into it, we're like, yeah. And then it's like, by the end of it, it's like, that was hard. Like, it's hard to live with another person. And now moving in with Mia, and now it's us. And yes, it's a different type of relationship, but we're super close and everything like that. But there's still problems because living with another person has its own unique set of problems, because if you're not going to always be on the same wavelength all the time, you're not going to be on the same schedule all the time. You're going to have different desires. You're going to want to go do one thing while the other person wants to do this other thing. You're going to not want to do something when this other person does want to do something. And that's not to say anything other than it's just an inevitability. And I think the biggest thing that you could say, for example, when people go into a relationship expecting it to be, like you were saying, paradise, and then all of a sudden it's not, all of a sudden there's this like expectation and strain on this relationship that will then warp that person's view of the other person, because they're like, you're not meeting my expectations. And I think that's where a lot of people can like let that get in the way of their actual relationship and be like, well, this isn't working and I don't want to have to deal with fixing it, so I'm out. And then that's how people can split up. That's an example. But I think there are also other cases where it's like, well, we went into this like different people than we came out of it. And by this point, it's better if we stop living together or whatever. And then it's like, oh, I mean, it still ended the same, but it's like a different perception. Like each person is like, okay, well, that happens. Whereas the first example is like, I hate you. I hate you as a person instead of just the circumstances we were in. Like, like going back to the example with living with Shane, it was just the difficult part was mostly just because we live two different lifestyles. And so it's like when whatever he was doing conflicted with whatever I was doing, I would get like a little annoyed or bitter and be like, well, you should do this way for me, essentially. And he never did it. He never said that in return to me, but I'd say that's more of a result of like our differing personalities. He's less of a confrontational person. I'm not very confrontational depending on the situation. So like, I think the main thing is I was more willing to go and speak out about things I didn't like that he was doing than he was more willing to say the things he didn't like that I was doing, which is fine. But that's exactly my point is like, then I had this like internal guilt reflection of being like, oh, am I being like an asshole? Am I in the wrong for pointing out all these things that I don't like? Or am I justified in that? And it created this like weird internal thing as well as like this. We never really butt heads. Like we got along still. It hasn't ruined our relationship even a little bit. But my point is like, you can go into it thinking, oh, we have a good normal relationship, so this should be easy. And then it's like, you come out of it and you're like, ugh, that was not easy. So it's like, no matter, I think that expectation that you were describing is so like, it sets people up to fail and it gives them unrealistic expectations and it gives them really a bad mindset going into whatever to the point where they're unwilling to like separate the context from what's actually going on. Those are my 2 cents.
And that's why I'm not a historian by any means. Mm-hmm. That's how I basically generally view that whole thing is kind of like our whole social media thing. It's unrealistic because you're comparing yourself to a fantasy.
Yes.
And now it makes it even harder because outsider people looking at other outsider people, however people are in that moment, typically you would probably think that's how they are all the time because that's how you fucking see them all the time.
It's the only way you've seen them, so that must be the only way they act. Yeah.
Like, for like the few times I've met your dad, for example, that's how I've met your dad. You know, I can't fucking imagine what your dad's like when he's angry, for example. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that either.
He's listening to this right now. That's hilarious.
And that's just how it is because
though, his main perception of you is on this podcast. I mean, yes, he's met you in person a couple times, but let's be honest, I don't know if he really remembers you. And most of his understanding of you has come from what you've said while we're recording. And even this episode specifically will change other people's view of both of us.
Yeah.
Because of the way we react in certain situations that you could never know. If we never recorded that, no one would know.
That is true.
So it's like really fascinating, especially when you bring up, oh, this happens like fairly frequently. And it's like, oh yeah, it does.
Yeah, we do this a lot.
Yeah, like it's just a part of what goes on. But like I said before, you don't realize it until it's like, I'd say specifically when you're being recorded and you're almost on the hook for it. Granted, I could edit it.
That's fine. Leave it in.
No, I want this to be, I think it's really insightful. So anyways, what I'm saying is it's not until like you really have a mirror shown in your face that you realize the reality. There's your perception and then there's reality, and reality is far different, whether it be of other people or yourself or anything. What on a grander scale, what's going on in the US or the world or the universe. Like it's all about like, I think one of the biggest things that people should be aware of is there's a difference between the way you view things and the way everyone else views something. And if you can just know that and be like, okay, this is happening because I believe something different than you, which means I need to take into consideration what your point of view is. I don't have to fully understand it, but at least know what it is before I go and be like, oh, you know what?
What?
I'll leave this in. I'm not going to edit this out.
Okay.
We were talking about how it's so loud? It's because
Okay. I was scared. I thought you were going to.
I turned it up.
I thought you said we were going to record it. We weren't recording. I thought that's what you were going to say.
No.
I was like, oh my God.
No, I was just like looking at it and I was like, I totally turned it up instead of down. Anyways, it's the perception of my view of something is completely different based on every piece of context imaginable. And if you can't get that through your head, whether it be during a debate / argument, while you're living with someone that you have a good relationship with, and all of a sudden it's like, what? You think that about this? I didn't know this whole time. But then it's like, okay.
Yeah, see, I'll say that I personally don't like argue or debating simply because I suck dick at it. I'm being complete like whatever this I'll be honest, I don't think I ever want to debate against you or Cameron. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I've got to be 0 for 100. Even with Davis, I don't think I'm shit at it. That's my thing. So that's why I don't like doing it, because I'm shit at it.
I would disagree with you on that point.
Really?
I think you don't give yourself enough credit. And I think you're giving us too much credit. And I think the main factor in that is posturing, quote unquote, where we say things with, and Mia's brought this up to me. This is why I'm talking about it.
Okay.
I say things with like, I'm not saying 100% of the time, but most of the time when I'm in that situation, I say things with certainty. Like what I'm saying is true. Cameron does the same thing.
I am the law.
And Cameron does the same thing. And maybe that's where I learned it, because him and I used to do it. We've been doing it since we met each other. So it's like, maybe I learned that like bullheadedness to accommodate for Cameron and I doing that all the time, as well as like, then I'd take that and then I'd do that with my siblings. And then it's like, it's become this thing. Like I said, it's become a habit. But
it's mighty effective. I got to say that.
Well, like I was saying before, there's downsides to it, which I don't like because it conflicts with my personality in some ways, such as it's never my intention to like make someone feel bad or to hurt somebody. I don't like I said, I don't like confronting someone and like making them feel guilty, because then I feel guilty. And so it's like, when I act that way, my intention is one thing, but the way it's received is another thing. And then it's like, ugh, I didn't mean that. Like, not that I say things I don't mean, but I come off in this manner of like what you perceive as I'm good at debating. Whether or not I am, the main point is I only say the things that I know, and I say them with certainty, which gives this perception of knowledge or whatever. I don't believe that's what it is, but I think I've been in a debate class. I hated it because it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't people arguing with each other.
What was it?
This is the evidence I've gathered. And blah, blah, blah. It's literally like you're in court. And it was like, I hated that class. So you went to one of those meetups with me. I remember
that. Yeah,
but
that was boring.
I literally never went to one after that. And I got credit for it because I like the teacher. And he could tell I didn't want to, but I was still trying. Anyways, that's a side story. I think the main thing is like some example. It's just two different types of people. Cameron and I'd say are in a very similar camp, where you and Shane are also in a similar camp, where it's like, if it's not talking down, but it's like, if I confront you on something, I'm like, well, why not this? When Cameron and I simply ask, well, why? Then it's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, now I got to prove what I'm saying for like no reason. I get that way against certain people. Like if someone who I knew was some expert on something and then they would like challenge me on what I believe, I'm like, ah, crap. I mean, granted, I would probably still say the things I know, but the whole point of this saying, like, I don't think you're bad at debating from my perception, seeing you debate with other people, because you essentially do the same thing I do, except the only difference is when it, like you were saying, if it's someone who isn't a close personal friend, you do just fine. But then when it becomes personal, it's harder to maintain that. Like, it's almost, you don't really care the outcome when it's someone else, right? Like, you don't care, okay, cool, dude, you won. But like, when it's a personal thing, it's like, why do you care about winning against me so much? Like, that's frustrating. I get that. Like, that's annoying.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the main difference, is like, it's against the people closer to you that you get this like sense of, and granted, I'm sitting here analyzing you, you're your own person, but
I'm okay.
Yeah, I think, and I speak from my experience, like that's mainly what it is. Like, Mia is she's described to me the same thing. She's like, I just feel like I can't say anything that will, I guess, compete, quote unquote, with what you're saying. And I'm over here like, I'm not even wanting that. I'm not trying to compete. I'm not trying to make you feel like you don't have a voice. I'm speaking my voice, but I'm probably speaking it too forwardly. So I'm right now, over the past 6 months, especially since we first moved in, I've been really trying to like focus on stopping talking for a minute, or like stopping responding to every little thing. And I still do it, but I think that's the main difference. I wouldn't say it's like one person being better at something than another. I'd say it's two different mindsets and personalities like clashing, but naturally, since I speak the way I do, it looks as if I know more, which I don't. But like, you are way more educated than I am, Jared. I want you to know that. Okay, I think anybody listening to this podcast can hear that, because you pull random facts out of your ass.
Okay, it's just when it comes to friends and family, you guys are like the kryptonite. Simply put it, I was like, oh, you guys, like,
right,
in a good light.
Yes,
what I'm about to say is like, you guys piss me off, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because like, we have a good relationship and I care, so that's why you guys make me mad. That's why you guys make me mad, or pissy, I should say. I agree full-heartedly with the fact that like, I get so heated about certain conversations because I care. Yeah,
and I care about what we're talking about, even if it's something extremely small and trivial. It's like, I care about conversing this with the person I'm conversing it with, where I don't get into these debates with. I'm the opposite of you. I don't like talking extensively, especially debating with people I don't know.
I love that.
I literally don't do it. I don't think I've ever done it. Like, actually, the only person I've done it with was, the only person I've debated with that I didn't know them was, I don't remember who it was. There's one of Shane's friends that was at our house when we lived together. And she had said something, and then I got into this like playful debate thing, but then she got really heated.
I think I know who it is, but keep going.
Yeah. No name dropping, but it was like, I just remember like, she got so heated about it. And I was in the same thing you were saying. I was just kind of like laughing at it, like, like, okay, well, I don't really care. You could think what you want to think. I'm just saying what I'm saying. So it's like, which, I don't know. There's always a good side and a bad side to all of this. None of this is like set in stone by any means, but
well,
yeah.
Going back, I think I kind of heard about this. It was like Elon Musk talking about it, because you know what, he's all about the chip in the brain, or what's it called, Neuralink.
Neuralink, yeah.
And I didn't really like. He was saying how complicated it is for humans to speak, because you have this concept in your head, you know, maybe it's a simple concept, maybe it's complicated, who knows, and then now you're trying to figure out a way to articulate it for someone else to understand it. And so that's kind of complicated to do that. Like, that's kind of advanced.
Oh yeah, especially when you break it down like that.
And so I don't know what's going on about, to be honest.
Talking about how complex communication is and how like I think something using that piece of information, I'll go right back once you remember.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing that popped in my head after you said that is like that explains why there's so many miscommunications and how it's so easy to mess something up like that, because it's one of the most complicated things we do is speak to each other, as well as like so hard to convey how you feel to somebody with
because we're different, you know, like
exactly. So it's like, oh, you're upset about your internet lagging, like baby, like even something as simple as that, like, oh, I just don't think what you're upset about is valid for being upset about, when that's everyone can be upset about whatever they want as long as they're not hurting other people for it. So like that's another thing is like, oh, like you hear it from older generation talking to younger generation. Oh, you didn't have it half as bad as I did. Well, it's still a problem for them. Like, validate the fact that they still don't, that doesn't make them feel better. They're not like, oh, you know what? With that new light of perspective, I feel great. That's not how people work. You just don't convince people with one sentence or one discussion. That's impossible. You have to like, in order for someone to actually feel understood, you have to like genuinely understand them, as blatant as that sounds. If you don't sit there and be like, okay, I get you feel this because of this, and I understand that, and blah, 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 blah. You break it down, you actually talk with them about it. Then the other person will be like, oh, cool, they get it. Instead of like constantly trying to be like, no, you don't get it. You don't get it. You don't get it. But then the problem is when you get in those situations, if like the person doesn't feel understood, and then it's like, then they start kind of tripping over themselves or whatever, because you're like in this like almost desperation mode of like, just, I'm trying to tell you what I mean, and blah, blah, blah. And you don't get it. And then, oh, I just misspoke. And all of a sudden that's ammo against you because you're put on the spot and you're stressed out because you're just trying to communicate something.
That is devastating, by the way.
It's hard. Like
when you're on the receiving end, you're like, oh, I fucked up.
Yeah. You're like, I didn't even mean that. But now it's like, now I can never get over that.
Yeah.
Like, I can never convince you now that I've made this small mistake. I am guilty of doing that exact thing and thinking on it. I'm like, I hate when people do that to me. So I need to like not do that. But it's hard not to when you're in this, when, like you're saying, when you're in that one up situation, you're like, ha, gotcha. And then it's like, well, now the other person just feels like shit. So who wins?
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the personal relationship thing, like it puts a lot of strain when there really doesn't need to be any. I mean, there can be some just because, but there doesn't need, it's unnecessary. It can put a strain on friendships and like intimate relationships. It can put a strain on family relationships. It can do so much that's like not worth it. And that goes back to what I was saying about burning bridges. Like,
it sounds like a familiar episode.
Yeah. Like if you do that too much and you don't recognize it, you'll just start burning bridges in your life because you're an asshole. And it's just not worth it. Like, I think self-awareness is like one of the most important traits you could have in order to like be a positive person in general to yourself and to other people. I don't know.
I remember what I was going to say.
All right. Well, what's that?
So whenever I speak,
yeah,
I like to use words like stupid, for example, and that with a huge, very broad,
wide sweeping,
I could say a lot of things are stupid where people will be like, they would never call that stupid or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's Davis told me this. He's like, Jared, you know how people normally have genius moments? He's like, Jared, you have ingenious moments. I was like, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Because I remember, because you were talking about someone at the house,
mm-hmm.
the whole debate thing, and she didn't take kind to that.
Right.
There was a similar situation that I actually had at the house as well.
My house?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is when at Shane's birthday party or something, right?
No, we're just
We were
all of
just
us hanging
over.
out.
Okay, yeah.
Everyone was just over, and certain lady was over, and we're just talking.
Yep.
And I just remember the conversation. It was something about these oxygen chambers, where there was this whole story of this one kid who got like in a car. It was some sort of accident, and he was in a wheelchair, and the doctors were saying, "Oh, you can't," because he was an athlete of some sort,
Right?
And something to do with his legs, and doctors were saying, "You're not going to be able to move like you were able to," and some public figure took his whole story to heart and tried to help him out. And it was some sort of oxygen tank for like an hour or 2 hours. They just pump your brain specifically, with like more oxygen than normal. And I've heard people talk, like, one reason why working out is so important for the brain is because when you're working out, you're breathing heavier and
getting more oxygen
to your brain. I'm not a doctor,
right?
But it was the concept of getting more oxygen to your brain and allowing your brain to heal, I think, is the whole point. And so he did multiple. Yeah, he also did other therapies, but doing this whole oxygen tank, whatever it was called, combined with whatever he was doing, he like started to run again, and like it's like this like stereotypical like miracle thing, fairy tale.
Yes.
And I used when I see, rather than explaining that whole story like I did now, I just said, "Oh, people, with brain problems, like they go into the tank and they come out better." It's basically what I said. And
the brain tank.
And to be fair, it was late. It was late at night. I was tired. And I'm just speaking. And she looked into it, and she's like, she thought it was full of shit when I said that, because it sounds crazy. And then she started reading it, and she's like, "Oh, wow." And then she's like, "But what you said about the whole brain thing before, I don't want to say it.
People with mental issues?"
Yeah, it makes it worse when you say, like, I'm just trying to think of.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a word here that's
not another word.
Yeah.
Mentally challenged?
No, that makes it worse.
Okay, well, that's better than the other word.
I know. That's the issue.
Just say that. Okay, I'll say it.
Okay.
Other than, so you're claiming that people with mentally challenged people could go into this oxygen tank thing and come out more, like it would resolve some of their issues.
Yes, that's basically what I said.
Okay.
I just don't want to say what a specific which thing I said.
Oh yes. Okay.
And for me, that's just me with a fucking broad brush, because I didn't want to take the time to explain everything.
Especially when you're perceiving this as just like a general conversation.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need to go into that much detail.
Yeah, and the reason why I said is because she was going to become a nurse. That was it was nurse or doctor.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that's why I even brought it up in the first place. And then I just remember for maybe like a minute or 2 minutes,
just doing a research.
No. She was just saying, like, "Jared, what you said like has nothing to do with what, like, the whole like cure to whatever." And and then for me, I was just sort of like, why are you looking at that with a magnifying glass?
Yes.
Because for me, in my head, it was just the concept of brain damage in general.
Right.
But I completely used the wrong word was the issue, and I used a broad brush to say what I said.
Here's the thing, though. Here's something for you to consider.
Yeah.
Consider that you're talking. So this whole conversation stemmed from her saying, I'm going to be a registered nurse or whatever. I'm going in the medical field, right?
It happened because I already knew she was.
Okay.
And when I had learned about that, I just said, "Hey, I heard about this."
Okay.
I initiated it.
Yes.
I think.
So, but it was on the basis you knew that she was.
Yeah, I knew she was going in the medical field. So it was fun talking to her because I just asked her random medical questions.
So I get it. Like your thought was, oh, she'll know this, so I'll say it. Like she gets it. Whereas you were to say it to me, I would have just been like,
cool.
Whoa.
Yeah, cool.
Where she would have something to say. I think the thing is though, when you say something like, did you know this thing? And then they go, what?
Yeah.
Immediately they're going to do what they can to like figure it out. Like if you're to tell me about some sort of movie thing or video editing thing, I would either come back with, yeah, I know how that works. Or are you sure that doesn't line up with what I know? Then I'd go and look at it. And I think it's just a matter of, oh, this is something this person, and it goes back to this. She cared way more about that than you did. And all of a sudden it turned into something you weren't even initially intending.
Literally in my mind, I was just thinking, I was like, oh, I misspoke. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
That's literally what I was thinking.
But then she's like, well, you're saying the wrong thing to someone who knows their shit.
Yes.
And then it's like, anyways, I get that. It's like a mismatch of, I don't know.
Oh, it is what it is. It already happened.
And it's like, the thing is it's like a vicious loop because it's like, you wouldn't have even said that to her if she wasn't educated in the medical stuff. So that's what initially made you go, oh, I want to say this because she'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then it backfires because then it's like, well, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because I know what I'm talking about. And then, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of explained it to her. I was like, well, I meant to paint with a broad stroke, blah, blah, blah.
Over general. I've done that.
Going back even farther now.
Mm-hmm.
So, going back to the whole relationship thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what this was. Yeah.
There was... it was kind of related to the ideal family.
Mm-hmm.
It's just simply the idea, and this has been talked about, for a while. Polyamorous relationships and monogamous relationships.
Okay.
I thought about it more, and I'm not going to really be quoting the Bible, like Christian Bible or the Christian Bible specifically.
Yeah.
Because how people will find whatever fucking passages and be like, whoa, this dude had one wife, but this dude had like 50 wives.
Are you saying they're going to do exactly the example we were just talking
about? Yeah.
How dare you say something without fact checking?
And so basically the whole gist is it seems it's monogamous relationships are more of a Western thing.
Yes.
And polyamorous are more of an Eastern thing.
Yes.
Simply put it. And it's got me thinking of if we were to, and this could be wrong think, but it was more of, is there a better of the, like, which one's the better of the two if we're able to measure that somehow? Because it was in sociology that was brought up, the whole monogamous and polyamory thing.
Okay.
Because the guy teaching it was saying how a lot of the Earth's population, like a lot of people were polyamorous, and it seems more of a recent development to be more monogamous.
It's more modern, yeah.
Like we know, like for example, the Greeks, the Enlightened.
Yes.
They're polyamorous. That was a thing. They're fucking party people or whatever, going crazy.
Well, and it's, to be fair, it's human nature to have multiple partners.
Yeah, and so what I find interesting about the whole Greek way of doing it, though, it's because I would say for us, there's a definite distaste to it. It's frowned upon.
It's taboo for sure.
But for the Greeks, it was completely normal and not frowned upon.
Okay.
While they were still being like, intellectual and whatever. Yeah. Which is what I found interesting about it, because it's not like I'm comparing it to, a third world country that they're polyamorous. It's
it's another intelligent. That comes off
I
really
think
bad.
Well advanced civilization for its time.
Yes.
And they were they were all about polyamory. And then for us, advanced for our time, were monogamous.
Yeah.
And so then, just thinking about relationships in general, it's like, oh, which one's right? Like,
right.
And I don't even know where to start by even thinking of which one is right.
Right.
Because whenever I think about that, it turns more into like a gut feeling type of deal where it's just like, oh, I don't like that one, or I don't like that one.
Right.
Which then made me think more of how malleable our minds are.
Oh, yeah.
In the beginning, at least.
Especially now.
Because for me, I completely would want to be and expect a monogamous relationship.
Right.
Nothing to do with polyamory. But if it was as simple as, me growing up around that stuff, I could have easily just switched as that probably.
Yeah, exactly.
And just been completely into it.
Right.
And now I'm sure we could I'm sure there's a butterfly effect to all of this. You could
trace it back to when it all changed.
That's why I don't want to try to predict it, at least for me. I'm sure maybe there's like actual studies on it, but I'm sure there's like some crazy shit where, we know when you solidified your monogamy around whatever age, these doors open and these doors closed, and vice versa. When you become more polyamorous, these are the doors opened way later in life, and these are the doors that close. I was like,
we're so strict culturally, I think.
I agree.
To where, like, exactly what you're saying, like, that causes doors to close, where it seems a little bit more and more accepted nowadays to, like, not be married by your 30s. Like, there are people who just live their life seeing whoever they want to see and not being fully committed, or committing to multiple people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even, like, not thinking about it, but, like, saying that and bringing it up, it is interesting how it's, like, instilled in us to be like, ooh, polygamy.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, yes, it's different.
Yeah.
What negatives are there to polygamy? Other than like a lack of commitment, quote unquote, but you're still committing to multiple people.
I think this is where you get into the more people who like look into it. Because then I'm sure people could just pull out, oh, it does this to the thing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I just don't know anything about it, so that's why I'm not commenting on it.
Yeah.
But I'm viewing it kind of the same as because my most recent paper I turned in for sociology, I actually compared. So remember we talked about the whole OnlyFans thing?
Yes.
And how it's fucking on the rise and maybe normally.
It's the new thing. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of iffy talking about it because I've never talked about a subject. So I was comparing homosexuality and the whole OnlyFans, basically. I didn't say OnlyFans of the paper. I just said
the concept.
I said of the average woman or man, the average person, just able to sell sexualized content.
Yes,
easy. I didn't want to. That's how I literally like worded it.
Right.
And the example was, and again, like I'm sure an argument against homosexuality could be like it damages. Like I'm sure there's people out there that
there's always justification.
Yes.
And quote unquote explanations just to suit someone's narrative.
Yes.
And that's how it is for literally everything.
Yes, because that's what so in the paper I explain so in the paper I'm talking about sociological concepts. And basically I was just explaining the concepts and real world implications. And so one that I was using three concepts, one of them being anome, I always forgot to pronounce it. That's the state of normlessness.
Oh, yes.
And so for that one, I used the example of, for that time, my uncle, he's gay. At that time, when he's like, oh, whenever you came out gay in high school, you just get beat up. That's just how it was.
Yeah.
And so for him, he was in a state of normlessness because he's like, fuck, I can't speak about it because then I won't fit in with all that stuff.
Right.
And then I explain how over time that got normalized, and I talk about it's what's it called, latent I think it's called latent functions. Basically, it's unintended. I think it's latent function, unintended consequences of society.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure there's going to be some weird unintentional consequences for normalizing homosexuality, whatever it is.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, that happened.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Even socially, like outside of physics, even socially, when one thing becomes normal, that in turn has an opposite negative reaction. I'm only saying that to be like, it's not specifically. People can twist that, is all I'm getting at. People can twist that and be like, ooh, but in all reality, it's like there's always going to be a negative side to a positive change.
Yes. And so I just explained, like, you know, for me, I'm quite close with my aunts and uncles.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like, homosexuality, for me, that's completely normalized, and I don't give a shit.
Right.
And so I would say maybe that's like an example of a lane function, like people wanting to fit it, like people standing up for gay people, whatever, wanting to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And then a byproduct of that, like me growing up, it's like, oh, I just don't give a shit.
Right.
Type of deal.
All of a sudden it's not. It's
maybe
just
that was
normal.
an aim, but if it wasn't,
right,
then I'm the byproduct of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the latent function of what happens when everyone just starts doing porn.
Yeah. Oh, see, this is the topic that we were going to get onto at the end of last episode.
I don't remember.
Desensitization.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
And now we're at the end of we're pretty much at the end of this one. So
we still got to talk about that. We got to talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
But again, I think I was like, you know, it's gonna suck dick when your sister or brother, whoever, is fucking doing that.
All of a sudden, that
and then someone brings it up in school. It's like, Jesus Christ, now I got to deal with that. Like,
seriously.
And then I think it's less implicated. Like, then we get to your parents did it. You know what? Like,
right.
Like, fuck, I don't want to see that.
Because it's like, on one hand, it's like you can embrace it, but then it's like, okay, but what if I don't?
Yeah, and so it's just like,
what if that's not my reaction to it? Then what? Do I have to force myself? Like, I think I'm interested in what your whole thing is like, just because something's going to create more opportunity for someone doesn't mean it can't have a negative side effect.
Yes, and what I view, I don't know if it's like, I think this is certainly a highlight. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say the saying in the paper, but it was so not fucking
not appropriate.
Not very scholarly.
Oh, okay.
But I was so tempted to, because it fits so well. I just wanted to simply put in the paper, it was like, sex sells is what I wanted to say. I really wanted to say that so bad.
It's true.
I just want to say sex sells because it's certainly proving it.
Oh yeah.
But I never said that. I just said, I just simply put in like economic terms. I was like, you know, when you have a demand increase, you want to meet that demand with a supply increase.
Yeah, when it's something like an innate part of human nature.
Yeah.
You're in for the gold.
Yeah. And then I want to stress, though, I'm not necessarily against the sex sells, because this is the third concept. It's called deviance. Deviance just being going against the norm. So, for example, going back to homosexuality, I think it was justified going against the norm, normalizing homosexuality.
Yeah.
I think that's perfectly fine. Now, I think there's times where deviance is good, going against the norm.
Yep.
And I think there's times where going against the norm is bad.
Yes.
And then I use the example like right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think going against the norm, for example, becoming a Nazi, I don't think that's going to go very well. I think that's a time when deviance would be bad.
Yes.
But then I think it's a gray area then when I bring up people being able to sell their bodies
Yeah.
online can be like so because
there's-
everyone has a smartphone.
Yeah.
They're inexpensive now.
Yeah. It's part of everyone's life. And I think there's arguments for both sides, and you could fight till the end. No one's going to win in that argument. And the whole thing, like you were saying, it's not black and white. Nothing. The older you get, the more you realize things are not black and white, and there's gray area pretty much in everything.
Yeah,
except for, like you're saying, the Nazis.
Yeah, like there's again, because for example, I like my conspiracies and whatnot.
Yeah.
And going against the norm in those terms.
Yeah.
But again, I also have to understand there's times where it's just like, that's fucking stupid, man.
Right.
But the whole point of the paper was to focus on an idea called functionalism.
Okay.
And that's just basically, the words I put it, functionalism is just societies are complicated.
Yes.
And I simply compare it to a watch. I said there's a
Hmm.
lot of cogs that move the entire watch.
Yep.
And I said the 3 cogs I would look at were the animate, the latent functions, and the
Yeah.
deviants. Those were the only 3 cogs that I were looking at that were around each
Right.
other. But there's a lot of other cogs that are moving in the background that I just can't analyze.
Right.
And so
And it's unrealistic.
yes. And like this goes back to a whole qualitative versus quantitative thing. Like
Mhm.
with quantitative, you get way more, but it's not as rich
Yes.
in depth. Both the qualitative, it's way more rich and in depth, but then you lack the quantity.
There's few. Yeah.
And so
fewer.
you start picking and trading.
Right.
But then we'll be perfect one day. We can do both.
In my opinion,
Maybe
I
not.
think humans are capable. I think.
Put the chip in our brain.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Elon Musk. I think humans are too arrogant, and I think, in a way general sense, in terms of, we think we are capable of some insanely amazing things and things we haven't even come close to figuring out yet.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there's things we will never get, and I think one of those things is working together to achieve even greater. I talked about this on another episode, but that Dyson sphere thing, that video is like, in order for that to happen, every single person on Earth would have to work together. That will literally never happen.
I'm a believer.
I'm a
believer. I'm a
That's
believer.
fair.
I'm a believer.
That's fair. There's, like I said before, it's not black and white. My belief is that, but I am very open.
Here. This is what we do.
For an
This is what we
argument.
do. Okay,
For it.
we still need to watch Red Sun
Oh, you're right.
because, first of all, I really love Superman in that
Okay.
because I'm like, damn.
I think it's a very intriguing concept.
Well, when I'm like, does he make communism look fucking good? I just gotta say that.
That's amazing. Hey, and that goes back to, like, if you're raised around it, it completely anyways.
But I like how Superman goes about things. I won't spoil it,
Okay.
but Superman in Red Sun, even though he's a communist, because we view that as bad.
Yes.
He's a very, very caring person,
Okay.
and he doesn't give up on people. And
Right.
he views it as whenever someone acts out and does something bad or commits like an act of terrorism, Superman's response would be, "You're lost. We need to help you."
Right.
And then we start teetering on brainwashing here and shit like that.
Yes.
But overall, I'm such a fan of Red Sun because
I still want to see that. For anyone who doesn't know, that's if Superman landed in Russia instead of America.
in the Soviet Union.
Or Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
anyways,
good stuff.
I think I said this a lot on our previous ones. This might be our longest one, though. I think we've been going for like just under 2 hours.
Damn.
So that'll be kind of good. So anyways, that was episode 14. If you enjoyed it and you are listening on Apple Podcasts, it'd be helpful if you left just a star rating, not to write a review or anything. It just helps for people when they are viewing it at a glance. We're on all social media, so just follow us just under our name. And on YouTube, do all the YouTube things. If that is what you're listening on, it helps with YouTube specifically. anyways, on social media, we post when an episode comes out, we post, which is every Friday at noon. And it's just where to go to like keep updated and know when things are happening. And yeah. Got anything to say, Jared?
Nope.
All right. Bye-bye.